It's August. Schools are starting up across the country. Soon our Saturdays will be full of football and all the greatness that is associated with college football. A football Saturday is a complete day. The smell of the grill, the ice-cold temperature of your favorite beverage, team colors, the sound of the marching band, and the roar of the crowd as teams enter the field. College football Saturdays are the best. And tonight to talk some college football with me is Sammy Jacobs of Hoosier Huddle. His work can be found at HoosierHuddle.com and on Twitter at the handle at Hoosier_Huddle. Hello, Sammy, and it's almost time for football.
Hi, Brian. Almost time for football, and it's really exciting. We're finally in August. In like 3 weeks or 4 weeks. At week 0, they got some good games there. IU kicks off September 1st. Big Ten play starts August 30th. So it's right around the corner. Hopefully, this hot weather is out of here by then and turns into some nice fall weather, and we can start the football season.
It's one of those things that when the bowl games and the championships over in January, it seems like it's forever away. And then, you do a countdown with the player numbers and so forth, and we're down under 30 days or close to 30 days to go. But let's talk about the big story tonight. We were really just going to talk as fans and about some traditions and things, and we'll get to that here shortly. But news out of Columbus, Ohio is Coach Urban Meyer has been put on paid administrative leave due to the firing a week ago of an assistant coach who had been allegedly and still allegedly at this time had some harassment and some abuse issues with his spouse. Fill us in on what you know and your thoughts about the Urban Meyer situation.
It's a classic coaching scandal of who, he said, she said. It's domestic abuse, which everybody should take serious. Currently in an argument with my friends who's unfortunately an Ohio State fan. It's Urban Meyer's going to lose his job, but he did think it would be if like the Kansas code, this happened at Kansas, they would get rid of the coach, which just makes me furious because winning should not protect somebody. These type is it is a nationwide, probably a worldwide issue. Domestic abuse, sexual abuse, all these things that should be taken very, very seriously. Say that, it's Urban, Ohio State is awesome. You can't fire the guy. That's all a bunch of baloney. And if you want to send a clear message that this type of action will not be tolerated, I think that in Urban Meyer's termination. Now, he did not abuse anybody, but he allegedly didn't know. But this came out at Media Day last week that her coach, all these past and prior incidences came up, and then they fired him. So that leads me to believe I'm a son of 2 defense attorneys, so I do believe in innocency. But we're not in a court of law. We're in the court of public opinion at a state university where tax dollars are paying people's salaries. Who knows if these allegations didn't come out at Media Day, if that assistant coach would still be coaching, if he was okay with it. It just seems like there's a reactionary firing to these allegations coming out. And that's where I think the problem is. And it goes beyond Ohio State. A lot of these schools need to jump out in front of these things and find the facts as soon as possible, and not just fire people because it's the right PR thing to do. If they knew that this guy was abusing his spouse and that's unacceptable. I don't care if you are 100-0 with 5 national titles and all that stuff. And anybody is. So that's my 2 cents on it. They did put him on administrative leave. Ryan Day is now the acting head coach. We'll see. I think it's a good move at the time for Ohio State. Who knew what and what happened. There were reports that Urban Meyer did know. There were reports that the victim had told Urban Meyer's wife, and that you would assume that it comes back. And then there's reports that said Urban didn't know the whole story, told him. There's a little bit of a plausible deniability situation. My thing is, you're the head coach at Ohio State. If a 5-star recruit is, out 2 minutes too late on a Wednesday night, or a player is being at the training table, you're going to tell me that you don't know what's going on with your staff is a little bit far-fetched. And, while I do believe in it, not a court of law, this is public perception. And to me, right now, I think Urban, there's no way he did not know. And if he did not know, he needs to get out anyway. How do you not know like this happened with a guy who's been with Urban before at Florida and all those things? So it's a crappy way to start the college football season.
Yeah, and we wanted to get that out of the way early in our conversation. It is, domestic violence is something that needs to be taken seriously, and it needs to be taken seriously now, and it needed to be in 2015 when this alleged incident happened, and 2009 at the first time. I do believe in innocence until proven guilty, but we're seeing Michigan State have issues. We're seeing Ohio State in the wrestling program has been brought up, the Penn State, some prominent schools, and it must be do the right thing instead of winning at all costs. And I know there's a lot of money involved, and I know there's a lot of prestige involved, but this is a time where we need to start in our society doing things that are right. And I think what you can do is, if you're the head coach, and it's maybe easy for us to say sitting in a basement and talking sports, but what you do is you at least have to investigate that person. And in this day and age, you might have to give them some leave until they're either proven to get some time to prove to them that they're over their situation or get to the bottom of it. But you have to acknowledge it when it happens. You can't wait 3, 4, 5 years and then say that you didn't know when you're the head coach of a school that big. So it'll be interesting to see. It's not the way we want to start football, but let's take a turn, Sammy, and our listeners. What we're going to do today is we're going to go through the Big 5 conferences, and we're just going to talk like two fans sitting around at the tailgate. Best team, best stadium, best rivalry, biggest game of the year, teams we like, coaches we don't like, and we're just going to run through the Big 5 conferences real quick. So we're going to start with the Pac-12. And Sammy, what game or what stadium would you like to go to if you could just take off and go see a game in the Big 12?
Big 12 or Pac-12?
Or the Pac-12. The Pac-12. We're starting out west.
All right. Well, I am prepared to start with the MAC, but I will divert to the Pac-12 instead. To me, I always want to go to Washington. I had never been to Seattle, never been to Washington State. Plus, the idea of sailgating is something so unique. It's only a few schools. You'll get a theme when I get to the SEC as well. But to go on, I don't have the money for a yacht. I don't know if you could bring your rinky-dink dinghy up to the dock and tailgate on that. But if you knew somebody with a yacht, is on the Puget Sound right there by the stadium, that'd be awesome. You have good craft beer out there, and other beverages and coffee and seafood and all those things. So I think sailgating at Washington would be my top venue in the Pac-12.
Sammy, I have Husky Stadium down for those very same reasons, and I would encourage any fans to go Google and look at just pictures of the stadium and the surrounding areas around Husky Stadium at Washington. I would love to go there too. The other stadium I had in mind is at Oregon, Autzen Stadium. It's a smaller venue, but it is loud. And from what I've gathered on watching games on television and what people say, just a real loud atmosphere. And as a football guy, I'd like to see a game in the Coliseum. I'm not sure it's a great stadium and great views, but it's, as a traditional fan of football, I'd like to see that. Who do you think is going to be the best team this year out west in the Pac-12?
Probably Washington. There's a lot of 12. USC always has talent back, but they're replacing Sam Darnold, who is hopefully going to take my New York Jets to a Super Bowl sooner rather than later. Contract done, so Super Bowl, here we come in the next couple of years. But you have coaching changes at Arizona and Arizona State. But Washington, they bring back Jake Browning, really good defense. They have a chance playing Auburn first game of the year to make a statement against the SEC. And that's the biggest thing. Their stays in their favor a little bit. They get Stanford at home. They do have to go to Oregon. They do have to go to Utah, which are tough games. But you miss USC in the South, and that's huge. So I'm my number one in the Pac-12.
All right. Okay, you got a choice of rivalry games: USC, UCLA, or Stanford, California. Which one will you attend?
Can I go? I like trophy games. I would probably go UCLA, USC. I like that both teams wear their colored jerseys. It's a battle in LA. It's just one of those games that looks awesome on the field and it looks awesome on TV with those jerseys too. But I'm always a sucker for a trophy game. Cal, Stanford, although they don't allow the marching band anymore at the game. So you know what? If you allow the band back in the game, I'll go to Cal, Stanford. But they messed that up back with John Elway was at Stanford. So I would have to go USC, UCLA.
Well, so far in the Pac-12, you and I are in very close agreement. I had those two rivalries. Washington and Washington State plays for the Apple Cup, but that's not something again, I'm going to get out to the West Coast once or twice. I'm going to go see those other two. All right, is there a team or a coach that you just can't find yourself liking in the Pac-12? What team would that be on the outskirts of your fandom?
That I just don't like?
Yeah, don't like.
Yeah, USC. I hate USC. There's something. It's like people who hate the Yankees. I just hate USC, and I get it. They're arrogant. They haven't won squat since Reggie Bush was there. They think they're bigger than everybody else, and it's always nice to see USC lose.
Are you that guy that doesn't like the programs that win a lot?
No, there's programs that win a lot that are fine, but USC is the most. I mean, they were a lot of fun to watch when they had Carson Palmer and Reggie Bush, Lendell White, all fun to watch. But they're walking around like they own the place, and they got their tails kicked by Ohio State last year, and they haven't won anything in a long time.
Mike Leach, good coach or a better interview?
Ooh, I think he is a really good coach, but he might be a better interview. If you haven't watched Mike Leach's advice on weddings, it's fantastic. Google it right away. It's something that when I got engaged, I watched. It's something that I send my friends when they get engaged to watch. It's a must watch for anybody who is going to be married or somebody looking back at their marriage and wedding going, oh yeah, 100% correct. So anybody who could do those two things, Google Mike Leach. I think he's a fantastic coach. Really had the air raid offense going, but he might be a better interview.
Arizona's got two new coaches, Herm Edwards at Arizona State and the guy from Texas A&M, Kevin Sumlin at Arizona. Which school has a better first year, Arizona or Arizona State?
Arizona. They have probably arguably one of the best quarterback, if not the best quarterback in the country, in Khalil Tate. He's going to be in a lot of people's Heisman discussions. Arizona State kind of fell off last year as well. Herman Edwards, look, he coached the Jets. I liked him coaching the Jets. I think he's a fantastic human being, a good football coach, and somebody, who could be a good teacher. Can he win games in college football now? I'm not sure. He hasn't recruited since the 80s. Just connecting with these young guys is going to be huge. They're coming off a 7-6 year. They have a tough schedule. I think Kevin Sumlin with Khalil Tate, that just, they could be in the running for that Pac-12 South. So I'm
you play to win the game, right? Herm Edwards, you play to win the game. I'm rooting for Herm Edwards. Again, I'm not sure how that'll play out at Arizona State, but let's move to the Big 12. And what stadium, let's start out stadium again. Is there a stadium in the Big 12 that you would take a vacation to go watch a game at?
Well, here's the tricky part of the Big 12. Because if we're going atmosphere, I want to go to the Red River rivalry. But if I'm going on-campus stadium, I want to go to Texas. And Austin's supposed to be a fantastic college town. The Memorial Stadium down there is supposed to be awesome. But if I'm going general atmosphere for tailgating and all those shenanigans, I got to go Red River rivalry at the Cotton Bowl.
Again, both things were listed on my notes. And if I'm going to the Red River Shootout or Red whatever that's called, I'm going 3 or 4 days in downtown and where all the hotels are. I hear that the bars, the orange and the red are out and they're cheering across the street and doing all that kind of crazy stuff, which is what college football is. And then the stadium is half red and half orange. But that's something. Who's going to be the best team in the Big 12 this year? No Baker Mayfield at Oklahoma, but they got talent, right?
They do have talent. I think it's Oklahoma's league to lose. There are a couple good teams. Texas could be up there, even though they had kind of a down year last year. Tom Herman coming in year 2 has got a lot of recruiting talent. TCU also, it could be in there as well. My sleeper team in the Big 12 is West Virginia. Will Grier is arguably the top quarterback in the country. He's going to throw up those points. They get Oklahoma is traveling to Morgantown the final week of the season. So that's the game to circle. I think it, depending on how good West Virginia's defense is, that the conference will come down to that game. But I would take Oklahoma, although, you lose Baker and you lose a couple wide receivers, but that team is still stacked. They have Kyler Murray, who is the 9th pick in the first round of the Oakland Athletics in the Major League Baseball draft. They're letting him play this year, which if you're an Oakland Athletics fan, man, you got to be watching every Oklahoma game going, slide, just get out of bounds and slide and don't get hurt, because you just spent $9 million on that guy. But I'll take Oklahoma.
And we mentioned the main rivalry, Texas-Oklahoma. Is there a secondary rivalry that people should watch if it's on television or get a chance to go see? Would it be Oklahoma State, Texas Tech? Is there anything that's even close to a big-time rivalry?
Kansas Baylor? No. Bedlam, Oklahoma State. It's always usually, one of these 52-49 shootout games where they're scoring touchdowns. It's a fun game to watch. Lots of points, very little defense. And those two schools really don't like each other. And the past 5-10 years that game has real implications on the college football playoff, BCS, and Big 12 division titles.
I'm not a Coach Gundy fan. I don't know if it's because I'm challenged hair follically and he's got that mullet, but there's something about him that I'm not a big fan of his, and I don't like Baylor. But those are the two teams that kind of rub me the wrong way. Is there any particular thing that stands out that you don't like, or a team that you really do like in the Big 12?
Well, I don't like Baylor, but that's for obvious reasons. They've become one of these toxic programs. I don't have anything against Matt Rule and the players who were clean, but what happened there? Ooh, nice Western Kentucky Cup. I have that one too. It just the stuff that happened down there. It was really just put me off on Baylor. There's no real villain in the Big 12. Usually, if you went by your theory, I would pick Oklahoma, but usually I'm rooting for Oklahoma to knock off one of these other big boys. So I have no ill will other than to Baylor in the Big 12.
And so now let's move to the ACC down south and out east. The stadiums you'd like to go see a game.
Clemson. I'd say Clemson's by top. Death Valley, Clemson. Got to go to the night game. Have them run down the hill, Howard's Rock, and all those things. But I like the smaller venues in the ACC too. I think it'd be cool to go see Boston College up at Chestnut Hill. We've been to Wake Forest, Brian. That was a fun little stadium. It's always fun when you go and win and stuff like that. But yeah, Death Valley is number one. Florida State. It doesn't ring the bell for me. And then Miami plays in an NFL stadium, and that atmosphere is not great. So I'd go Death Valley hands down.
I agree with you. That was number one on my list. I do want to go to Doak Campbell. Yeah, and I was just going to say Lane Stadium. Just pulled it up on the computer, the other computer here. Lane Stadium and their intro and their crowd gets really going. A night game there and a big rivalry game would be an awesome atmosphere to go to. But I've been to Death Valley on the outskirts, not for game day. But I really would like to go see Clemson play there. It's a shame that Miami doesn't have a better venue because of the tradition of their football program would be something to go watch, and they play some big games at home, but the stadium is just not, there are stadiums that I just don't really want to go watch a game in. And I think Miami's had a few of them in their since I've been alive. Who's the best team in the ACC? I think that's a given. Who's the second or third team behind Clemson?
Behind Clemson, you probably got Miami in the other division. They're bringing back a lot of talent. We'll see if you guys were all in on Miami last year. I said, well, it's October and Miami looks good. We'll see what happens when November comes along and they got their butts kicked. But Miami's a fun team to watch. Florida State, I think, is going to bounce back. They get their quarterback back, coaching change. Maybe these guys buy in a little bit more under Willie Taggart, and you get a lot of guys back from injury. So Florida State's back there. Virginia Tech defense, I can't buy into their defense. Their entire secondary, I think, is gone. Either got kicked off the team or graduated and stuff like that. So second best team, I would put Miami.
And the ACC has really played some solid football and had a team. Clemson has just been the top team here the last few years and up in the college playoff. But the ACC is playing a little better. You get Miami back. There's a little bit of depth to that conference. Is there what's the rivalry in that conference? The best rivalry, in your opinion?
Oh man, well, Florida State Miami's always been a good rivalry. And then when they're both good, Florida State Clemson's the real deal. But a lot of those are the two rivalries I would circle as must watch games. We'll see. The Miami and Florida State players hate each other, and that's always fun to see. See them get into it at midfield, and I'm not condoning it, but it's always fun to see them jawing at each other. And then Clemson, Florida State, I think the winner of that game, the last 15 years, has won that division. So that has grown into a really nice rivalry as well.
There's some cross-conference rivalries that get started when we start talking to ACC. Clemson, South Carolina is one that would be a real fun one to go see. A lot of heat in those matchups. And Georgia Tech is another one. And I had just called up that Bobby Dodd Stadium might not be one of the greatest stadiums around, but it's uniquely right in Atlanta, and that campus is a really nice campus. I've been inside that stadium again, just touring it, but not for a game. And but there's some rivalries there. What team stands out for you? Is there a team that is your favorite, or a team that is a villain for you? Has Clemson arisen to villain status because of their success?
No, I like Miami. I'm all about the U. I almost went to University of Miami. Took tours down there and all that stuff. Uh, the villain's got to be Florida State. I mean, they're the classic villain with Dion and their guys talking and all that stuff. They even have like the villain jersey. They're your classic like villain team in the football movies. So that's my team that I dislike in the ACC.
Why not Clemson after they've been? How long does it take a team to get on your villain list after they've won for a while? Or is Dabo Sweeney just that good of a coach? I really like what he does, so that's why Clemson stays as one of my favorites, despite the winning.
It's not like, oh, you have to win so much and you're automatically on my list. It's how you win, and you know, look, when we get to the Big Ten, we'll get to the Big Ten. But Ohio State, I hate Ohio State, and I mean, they win, but it's not. It's how they win. Like, I don't mind Michigan State, I don't mind Penn State, and I don't mind Wisconsin, although they're terribly boring to watch. But it's how you win, and I'm starting to disdain Michigan State and Penn State a little bit more because of all the background stuff and the scandals, and we'll see what happens at Ohio State. But Clemson, they've been through the trials and tribulations. There was Clemsoning that they've had, you know, a lot of moments where they've clutched, you know, they've grabbed defeat out of the jaws of victory. And I know that hits home with us with IU as well. So, you know, there will always be a place in my college football heart for Clemson. Like, hey, if they could do it, maybe we could do it. And so that's why I don't hate on Clemson. They're not at that arrogance level of, oh, we're Clemson, we've lost 2 games, we belong. They still believe that they're not going to win everything just yet.
I'm a traditionalist. I like to see traditional powers win, but if they've won too much in a row, then I get tired of them quickly, and then I'll wait for them to fall back. Texas is a team that I really like to follow now. But they were back when Vince Young, I got a little tired of them. Notre Dame is that way for me.
Brian, it's okay to like bad football. I get it. It's okay to watch mediocre teams.
I get that. I've done that for a long time, and that's about to turn around, hopefully. But
yeah, but you can't put the IU on your list when they start winning.
I've always been there, though, right? But I won't take them off if they do start winning. So let's go to the SEC, and there's a ton of stadiums here that I would like to go see. I've been to Neyland Stadium, beautiful atmosphere, beautiful stadium. Again on the river. When you know you're going to talk about that. What other stadiums are on your bucket list if you can go see games there?
Well, I've been to a game at LSU on the sideline against Notre Dame, and that was fantastic. I was probably a little too young to enjoy all the festivities that Baton Rouge has to offer, but I'd like to hit them all just because it's the SEC, and that includes Vanderbilt. I'll suck it up and go to Kentucky too. But I'd like to hit a game at all of these SEC stadiums. But again, with Neyland Stadium, it's a unique opportunity to do something you cannot do in very many places, and that's tailgate on a boat as part of the volunteer Navy. And it's just a unique thing to do. And each SEC school has their unique things. You know, Vanderbilt's an intimate stadium. I think it holds around 40,000. Nashville's a fun city to go to. And the food is great and things like that. And each SEC, even though the quality of football might not be there, each SEC town brings a little, you know, Southern flair, Southern culture to their school. I think Mississippi Stark Vegas will be fun. I know as a baseball guy, that would be, you know, you could go in the fall and in the spring for tailgating down there. Ole Miss, you got the Grove. We've talked about them a lot when discussing IU's tailgating situation. And then you have everywhere else: Alabama, Auburn, Georgia, you know, Florida. Probably the best tailgate or the most famous one is the world's largest cocktail party at Florida, Georgia, which takes place off campus in Jacksonville. And that's another, atmosphere that I'd like to take into.
There, you cannot go down. I have the standings, last year's standings up, and you cannot go down any of these schools and say that it wouldn't be a good Saturday to go watch a game. I've been to Kentucky, Missouri, and Tennessee are the three schools that I've been to. LSU is something I really, really want to go see and have some gumbo and tailgate there. And then Ole Miss at the Grove has to be a tailgater guy like me. That's a dream. And there's just a ton of places. The SEC loves their football, and they have really, really exciting times and exciting places on Saturday afternoons. And when we talk rivalry, Sammy, man, we can spend an hour on the rivalries, but name off a few that would be awesome to see.
I mean, the Iron Bowl obviously is number one. Then you have Auburn, Georgia, which is the South's oldest rivalry. I'd love to see IU and Kentucky get back together, but that's not going to count. LSU versus Arkansas for the Golden Boot. That's a cool game. Yeah, Egg Bowl, Ole Miss, Mississippi, LSU, Alabama was hot for a while, and now you're seeing Georgia, Alabama, Georgia, Florida, Tennessee, Alabama. Tennessee's got to do their part sometime. That game's got to. These games that for me for a rivalry, part of the mix is do I have a rooting interest in the team, and two is do they hate each other, and is it competitive? And so recently competitive. And right now, Alabama's just running away with everything. But that used to be one of those can't miss rivalries in the SEC.
We didn't talk about Kyle Field and Texas A&M with the Aggies and all the cheer block and everything that goes on at Texas A&M. I have been able to see Texas A&M when they were up at Notre Dame, and the fans that traveled in the cheer section, the yell leaders, the bonfire before home games, just a lot of great traditions. Teams you like and teams you don't like, just from a fan's perspective in the SEC. Or do you have an SEC bias, because they've been so good and they get, multiple teams considered in the playoffs? I know there's a lot of fans in other conferences that just they don't like the SEC because of their prominence.
Well, I'm an LSU fan. When Jerry DiNardo was there, we're family friends, and I grew up rooting for LSU for the time he was there, and Vanderbilt before there. I really, really like SEC football. I don't think that they're better than, talent-wise than everybody else, like everybody says. So Alabama is, but not the rest. But I think they just do college football better. With the tailgating, the passionate fans, they bring that culture that basketball is in Indiana, and that's what I like about the SEC. Now, with my fandom of LSU, I don't like Auburn, I don't like Alabama, I don't like Florida, and all those teams. I will root for Vanderbilt. My fiance is a graduate from Vanderbilt. I will root for Vanderbilt. And I don't like Kentucky. And I know that's, stems more from my days at IU than anything else. But I have a real disdain for Kentucky. I don't like Alabama. I respect them. They're a heck of a football program, but it's like, all right, enough already. And then Auburn is one of LSU's big rivals, and I don't like them either.
I also have, for some reason, like LSU, but Tennessee is probably my favorite SEC school. I think that was back when Peyton Manning was playing, and that was actually before he became an Indianapolis Colt. I've always liked Rocky Top and that kind of thing, the atmosphere of Tennessee. So Tennessee is probably my favorite SEC. LSU is second. Then there's just some teams, I'm not a big fan of the expanding conferences. I think that's taken conference play away. And so, when Texas and Texas A&M don't play anymore, that bothered me, and that leads me to be a little bit of an anti-Texas A&M.
Well, it's really going to be anti-Texas because that's the reason they left.
Well, that's true. That is true. But I just don't like the new. I've had a hard time with Maryland and Rutgers. It took me a long time to welcome Penn State into the Big Ten, although now I don't have a problem with Penn State being in the Big Ten. But those are the two teams. Alabama is just is the villain for me here in this conference. I would also add probably Florida as well, although they're one of those traditional programs that's been down for a while that needs to get rejuvenated. Okay, so let's move to the conference that we follow.
The
extremely
MAC.
Not the MAC. Although the Glass Bowl at Toledo would be a place that would be pretty cool. I've been to Bowling Green, so if there's a little bit of MAC conversation today.
I've been to Bowling Green, Ball State, Akron.
Yep.
I mean, I want to hit them all. But the new Akron Stadium. I did not go to the Rubber Bowl. Okay.
So we're going to
the Big Ten.
We're moving on to the Big Ten. And is there a stadium you haven't been to covering Indiana football?
Yeah, Minnesota and Nebraska are the two. I've been to Minnesota, but it was at the Metrodome. Nebraska is the only school that I have not been to. I will miss TCF Bank Stadium this year because of a wedding, but I have not been to Nebraska, and that's probably one of the top venues that I need to see.
I have not been to the new Minnesota. I am planning. That's our fall break here. So I'll have the whole week to travel. And that's a Friday night game. So I can leave on a Tuesday or Wednesday and get up there for some atmosphere. I'm not a big fan of the Friday night games, but it just happened to be on my week off. So that worked out. Nebraska, I haven't been. I haven't been out east for the games, the Maryland and Rutgers, the new additions. But other than that, Brent and I and Brandon, we've done a lot of traveling, especially the day travel spots to Michigan and Ohio State and Northwestern, Purdue, Illinois. Those games, we've made a lot of those one-day trips and even some weekend trips to Wisconsin and Iowa. So what stadium is your favorite as a fan, and is there any different covering it as a reporter?
Well, I haven't been as a reporter to Iowa, but Iowa as a fan is my favorite. Kinnick, it's a very intimate stadium, although it holds about 75,000 people. You're right on the field. You have close seats. The fans, at least the ones I have experienced, were welcoming to us. The food is fantastic. They have all these vendors outside of the stadium with giant turkey legs, barbecue, and all that stuff. And so Iowa's probably my favorite as a fan. To cover a game, I would probably say I like covering Rutgers just because I get to go home. But Ohio State is the easiest one to cover. It's a day trip. Their press box is really, really nice. They have the best food spread in the Big Ten. It is not my favorite place to go to as a fan. I can't stand the people there in the stadium and all that stuff. But I think the difference is that you don't have to deal with people when you're sitting in the press box. And as a grumpy New Yorker, sometimes I don't like dealing with people. And I know, shocked that we've gone now almost 40 minutes without having the cops called on us.
Okay, for our listeners, Sammy stopped by the tailgate before he had to go do some reporting, and we got into a discussion about Indiana football, and it got a little loud back and forth, and we were just having a good friendly argument. And as he's walking away, he's yelling.
Even angry. It wasn't angry. It was just loud.
He was yelling back his point, and I was yelling back, and some people came out of their mobile homes, and then about 10 minutes later, an unmarked police car came and sat right outside our tailgate, making sure there were no problems. And then you came back and I told you that, and we just had a good laugh.
Yeah, that'll go down as one of the all-time great Consoni tailgate stories.
Right. But I thought the stadiums for me, I like Iowa. I love tailgating at Michigan. I think you had your car towed, didn't you, one time up at Michigan?
Ann Arbor is the only place I've gotten mugged. And it is because those I'm sorry, I cannot call them the words I want to call them on this family-friendly podcast. But they forgot to tell me that you had to move your car 2 hours after the game, and usually it takes 2 or 3 hours to get stuff done after the game. And as I'm walking up the golf course, mind you, it's November and about 10 degrees outside. that you have to move your car off the golf course because people might play tomorrow. There was a 0% chance that somebody was playing golf tomorrow on that golf course. My car was on the tow truck. He says, the car's on the tow truck. I can't take it down. You got to give me cash. I was like, oh my God. And so like I went off on a Twitter rant against Michigan. I emailed the Michigan athletic director, who has since been fired. And not just because of that reason, but the tow truck driver got $80 out of me. I got my car back and went home. But I will forever. And get this, Brian, Michigan's got like a gazillion dollars. They do not have an ice maker for their soda machine in the press box. I mean, come on.
I thought I was on my way home. I was about an hour outside of Ann Arbor. I thought I was going to have to come back and pick you up and take you home because you wouldn't have a car.
You had to bail me out of jail.
I do like Michigan. We get up there early enough to park right across the street on a golf course. It's a nice place to tailgate. Iowa, same way. Wisconsin's a lot different. Not a lot of car tailgating, although there are some spots, but a lot of in-town tailgating, walking from bar to bar, and some good places up there at Wisconsin. Michigan State's not bad. I am not a big fan of going to Ohio State, and I will probably not go there when Indiana plays because of the same reason you said about interacting with people.
They just ruined the whole.
It's a tough place. And there's another school up where I live where I'm not excited about going to anymore either. But there's some decent people in that school. Northwestern, not a great tailgate atmosphere, but I love the old football stadium that they play in. But there's some good things. The rivalries of the Big Ten.
Before we
obviously
get to
Indiana, Purdue, right?
Yeah, obviously. But before we get to that, I do want to give Rutgers a shout out for their atmosphere. It's a place that I always enjoy going to as a reporter. Even when they're really, really bad, their fans are out tailgating for noon games really early. They have some cool setups, some cool buses, and like old ambulances and all that stuff. So if you're an IU fan who lives near the East Coast or wants to make the trip out on September 29th this year, Rutgers is a real underrated, fun place to go. The sightlines in the stadium are great. Rivalries in the Big Ten. You got the bucket game, of course. That will always, just because of personal interest and being an alum of IU, the IU-Purdue game will sit number one for me. Now that IU and Michigan State have been playing closer games and they've gotten a bit feisty, that old brass spittoon game is becoming a little bit more prominent. Of course, you have Michigan, Ohio State, but the cool. I think the Big Ten has the coolest trophy games. You have the Florida Rosedale that used to be a live pig between Iowa and Minnesota. There was a slab of bacon too that somebody apparently lost but brought back. I think that's Minnesota and somebody else. You have the axe, Paul Bunyan's axe between Minnesota and Wisconsin. You have the $5 bits of chair. I think that's Nebraska, Minnesota that I think Fo Pelini started. The Illabuck, while Illinois is not a competitive rival to Ohio State, that's a cool trophy. The history behind it, they had a tortoise. They had a live tortoise that they would pass from campus to campus, whoever won, and they'd write the year and the score on the shell, and now it's a wooden turtle. That's really cool. You have the Purdue Cannon between Purdue and Illinois. There's just a lot. It seems like every game is a trophy game. I wish that IU and Illinois would have a trophy game. I've also floated the idea of an IU Ball State trophy game. They could play for the I-69 Memorial, whatever, the Orange Barrel game. I think Indiana residents could get into that. Proceeds go to paying the construction workers on 37. And then you have, Michigan State, Michigan for the Paul Bunyan Trophy, the Land Grant Trophy between, I think, Penn State and Minnesota. I'm listing them all now, and right. Things like that. And you have Iowa and Nebraska is now a Thanksgiving rivalry. My big thing message, and you have the Land of Lincoln Trophy with Northwestern Illinois. My big thing about these rivalries, traditional rivalries, they have to be played on campus. Illinois Northwestern almost set a trend by moving that game to Chicago every other year. There's been talk about moving Indiana Purdue. I know you don't like going to Purdue, but you cannot move that game to Indianapolis. That is a game that is a culture builder for both schools. I hate that they moved it to when students are off campus on Thanksgiving. If you want to build a football culture at Indiana, that's a game that students have to be at. It's a natural rival, and that's something that people care about. And the same goes for Purdue. It's a cool game to be at every other year as a home fan, and I enjoy going up as a road fan to Purdue in enemy territory. I think it's a really fun to play the villain up there, and especially when you win.
And obviously, Ohio State Michigan is the rivalry that is well known, but it makes interesting the conference rivals. I agree with you. Rivalry games need to be played on campus. Absolutely would not like to see the annual game. The other thing that you mentioned that I think really should get some play is traditionally that IU Purdue game has been the last game of the year. But if they moved it up 1 week and kids are still leaving for Thanksgiving that week, or maybe move it up 2 weeks. But I agree with you. That is a rivalry game that students at Purdue and students at Indiana should be on campus and attend and that would drive a little bit of the football attendance and stuff that both of those schools have fought over the last few years to build a tradition. But that's what rivalry games are for, and the Big Ten has a healthy dose. The Big Ten East –
move it back a week. I mean, there's arguments that the season starts too early now, and I won't argue for that because I cannot wait until September 1st or August 30th or August 25th, whenever like New Mexico State plays Portland State and they put it on TV. I will watch that. But if you move it back a week, you start the season. Labor Day night, or whatever, or the next weekend. You give the students Labor Day, and you move it back into where the Big Ten championship game is now in December. I don't want to hear about it. It's going to be cold. It's going to be cold the week before too. It's always cold and crappy up at Purdue, and all that stuff. So I think you could even if they want to start the season Labor Day weekend and do that stuff, because they do have a good thing going on there. You could add an extra open week, which sucks to write about. But, I think for the health of those rivalries, it really does change. Because I have a friend who went to Ohio State, and even he said that game was affected. And you wouldn't think that because it's Ohio State, Michigan. But without students on campus, it's a less of an intense crowd and things like that. So I think, either moving it up a week, moving the season, back a week would help, or switching it. Although I hate moving it off of that last game of the year. As a traditionalist, that I hate moving it off that last week.
Yeah, that's true. Big Ten East has 4 power schools. Do you see anyone from the West being able to win the Big Ten championship? And does this Ohio State news maybe shake up the favorite in the Big Ten East? Who's the best team in the Big Ten?
On paper, it's got to be Ohio State.
Right.
Even though they're replacing JT Barrett, Dwayne Haskins is a heck of a quarterback. He's like Cardale Jones with a better arm and a more accurate arm, and he could run a little bit better. They have defensive line talent is unbelievable. Their offensive line is all back. They have 2 outstanding running backs, Dobbins and Weber. Their wide receivers should be better. They just have to be better. And the excuse of JT Barrett not being able to throw deep is gone. So if they do not put up numbers this year, that's on them. And they've underperformed. Do I think that we'll see what happens? If Urban does end up getting fired or has to take an extended leave of time and miss the season, I don't know how well they enforce administrative leave with him texting guys game plans and stuff like that. But if he is gone from the program, it kind of it does open up the doors. They do have to go to Penn State. They do have to go to Michigan State, and they do play TCU down in Arlington. So that opens the door. In the Big Ten East, I think you're looking at, Penn State has a shot. They bring back a very strong team, even though they lose Barkley and some other guys. And Michigan State was my sleeper team. I think Brian Lewerke's a clear number 2 quarterback in the Big Ten. They're always a nasty defense. Their receiving core is better than I thought from last year, and they have some guys up there. Their running game has to get better. And LJ Scott, whatever you think about him off the field, he needs to be better on the field. He has yet to break that 1,000-yard mark. But that's a team going into Michigan State's difficult. That's a team I think can beat them. My disappointment this year is probably Michigan. I'm not very high on Michigan, even though they bring Shea Patterson in. It seems like the Jim Harbaugh shtick has become stale with everybody. And
I'm now going to eat chicken every time I tailgate for a Michigan game or they're on TV. I'm going to eat chicken because it's kind of a crazy bird or whatever he said that he told his quarterback. Did you see that?
Yeah, it's a nervous bird. The guy is certifiably nuts. And everything he does has like a PR. You've seen it in World Series games with his glove, and that's just to get on TV. But it's put up or shut up time for him. And, even though his schedule is very, very difficult this year, they open up at Notre Dame. You'd have to go to Northwestern, which is not a gimme. You have to go to Michigan State. You get Wisconsin at home, Penn State at home, and you have to go to Ohio State. That's like 6 games you wouldn't be shocked if they lost. They're not going to lose 6 games. I don't think they're going to lose 6 games, but they could lose 3. And what do you do at Michigan if you lose at Notre Dame, at Michigan State, and at Ohio State? Harbaugh in his 4th year there, it has never beaten Ohio State, beat a down Michigan State team that one year, and now you're bringing back Notre Dame, and that's probably one of their more important rivalries, and you lose to them. And those are the 3 wrong teams that – now 9-3 is not a terrible year, but you're losing the 3 wrong games.
Yep. How about the West? Wisconsin, to me, is a clear favorite. I know – and then give a little bit of talk about Purdue, listening to your podcast on Hoosier Huddle, which I would suggest everyone go listen to as well. The Big Ten West was previewed. What's Purdue got this year, and maybe who's the second team besides Wisconsin in that Big Ten West?
Well, I think that the Big Ten West is wide open outside of Wisconsin. Wisconsin's the clear favorite with all the guys they return, and their defense is great. They have Hornibrook, Jonathan Taylor. It's like I'd be really, really shocked if Wisconsin doesn't win the West, and they could, they could win the Big Ten. If you get to Indianapolis, 1 shot is all you need. It's like a wild card game. Anyway, my second team in the Big Ten West is probably Iowa, but I mentioned Purdue on my pod. Purdue's going to have something to say about it. I don't know if Purdue's going to be better than last year. They probably take a step back, but the kicker is that they open the season with Northwestern at home. They also get home games against Iowa and Wisconsin. So those are your 3 top teams in the West. And if they lose to Northwestern, okay, their season will probably be mediocre. But if they beat Northwestern and the confidence boost that they could give that, and this defense loses a lot, but if they play like they played last year, this team's going to be dangerous, really dangerous.
Nebraska with Coach Frost coming in from Central Florida, are they a year or 2 away?
I think they're a year or 2 away. I think the damage that had been done in the last couple of years of Pelini, in the last 2 years or 3 years or however long Mike Riley was there, really did a damage on that roster. We'll see. I'm not buying Nebraska now. I think Purdue's in a little bit more better shape than Nebraska. They'll have a say on who comes in second. I would put Iowa right now as my number 2 team in the West.
Indiana, always, as we talk about, has to get 6 games in a bowl. That has to be where their focus is. Obviously, you'd like to have more, but that goal has to be 6 wins and a bowl game and keep the recruiting building. What do you see from Indiana this year?
In
general,
I wouldn't say it's a make or break year for Tom Allen in terms of being on the hot seat or not, but this is a big year for Indiana football as a program. They had some momentum going to 2 straight bowl games. They took an understandable step back last year with the new coach. And IU's history, you've lived it longer than I have, but going through a coaching change at IU is never easy for football. And the 5 wins they got last year, while it was disappointing, and I cannot stress that enough, 5 wins was a disappointing result. But if you look back at all the coaching changes that they made, 5 wins was a pretty good transition year. Now, if they don't go to a bowl
and they
game,
were close, Sammy. I mean, I know you're going to probably laugh at me saying this, but they were close in a lot of games and just didn't finish. The fourth quarters got the best of them.
Yeah, they were close.
But they were more competitive in that 5 and 7 year than they were in Wilson's first 2 or 3 years and the years prior to that. So while 5 and 7 was disappointing, once you step back and let the tailgate atmosphere wear off and you can take a look at it, they were close to getting that 6th win and a bowl game in a head coaching change year.
Yeah, and they probably should have. It's going to sound like Bill Lynch, but you look at the Michigan State game, a better thrown ball here or there. If they score a touchdown there to go up 13-3, that game's probably over. Maryland was inexcusable, but they missed a lot of plays in Maryland. If they just get that punt off, they win that game. And then Michigan going down into that overtime, and it was a great comeback, and you could blame the refs or whatever for that game too, because they were absolutely putrid. But going into that overtime, I thought the play calling, going back and watching it 3 or 4 times, I thought the play calling was fine. They had a nice little out route to Ja'Shawn Harris that if Ramsey throws it earlier, it's a touchdown. And then they had 2 runs inside that were reads that if Ramsey made the right read, that's a touchdown too. Now, the final play, I didn't agree with it, but you had to score that the first 3 times. And I thought the play selection there was fine. And then they were close. Purdue was probably their stinker, and they still only lost by 7. They just, I don't know what happened. I was down on the field for warm-ups. They looked fired up, but they just came out flatter than a 15-year-old can of soda.
I think you got to give Purdue credit too. I think they were hungry with the bowl game on the line at home, haven't been beaten several years in a row by the Hoosiers, and sometimes you just got to give credit to the other team.
Oh yeah, and their fans were fantastic. They sold out the stadium, and they were just fired up. And it's IU just looked flat, but yeah, all credit to Purdue there as well. To me, Indiana's got to get 6 wins. Otherwise, your program's kind of dead in the water. Then you're 2 straight years with no bowl games. Next year's schedule is pretty difficult as well. The talent on this team should be able to get 6 wins. I think, you pencil in those 4 losses. And I know you hate saying this, and I can't stress this more than enough. If your coach pencils in 4 losses for those games, the guy needs to go, because you cannot have that attitude. But as an outside media person, historically, you pencil in those 4 losses. The other, you should beat FIU, you should beat Ball State, and you should beat Virginia. All the rest of the games are toss-ups. Well,
it seems like both Purdue and IU are headed in that direction of at least challenging for 6 wins in bowl games, and that always makes the bucket game a little bit better. Covering Indiana and the Big Ten, is there any team that gets under your skin as a villain for you, or do you root besides when they play your team for the Big Ten to be as successful as possible nationally?
Well, the villain, it seems, changes weekly. We'll see what happens with Ohio State and Urban Meyer. If he comes back to coach, there's no way I could root for him. Just like, we'll see what happens with D'Antonio and what he knew and what comes out. But right now, I find it hard to root for him, given what happened to Michigan State. Penn State is an obvious one. Although I met James Franklin up at Media Day in Chicago, he might be a little eccentric, but I don't think he's like an evil person. Now, Penn State's program and some of their fans might have a screw loose, and you can't really shake the Sandusky stuff, but I don't have anything against James Franklin. It's more of the program as a whole. Those three teams, I absolutely, and then becoming more and more is Michigan. I cannot stand Jim Harbaugh. I cannot. That's why I couldn't stand Tom Crean at Indiana and them inviting Harbaugh to sit on the bench at games and stuff like that, and wishing him happy birthday the night before IU plays Michigan and things like that. But I got bugged up in Ann Arbor, so we're done. We're done with Michigan. I will root for those. I want to root for Big Ten teams. I do. But seeing it as an IU fan, I don't want these teams to be good. I don't want we're not going to go to the college football playoff unless we go 12-0 anyway, because that's how the committee sees IU football.
Right.
And I really don't like Ohio. I hate Ohio State. I don't like Michigan State. I don't like Penn State, and I don't like Michigan. Basically, I don't like anybody except for IU and probably Northwestern in the Big Ten.
We're talking football with Sammy Jacobs of Hoosier Huddle. Sammy, we're 30 days away from college football. I think we're at 30 today.
31.
31. Why? Last question, last comments here. Why should fans look at the schedule here in September, October, November, and go to a game or two or tune in on television? What makes college football one of the best things in sports, according to you?
School pride. I mean, the talent is not as good as the NFL, but it's school pride. You don't have all these political statements most of the time in college football. It's something that you're invested in. You feel like you're part of the team as an alumni of the school. There's natural rivalries, and rivalries in the NFL are great too. But every week it seems that college football is a rivalry game. We have friends who went to Ball State. We have friends who went to Illinois, Ohio State, Michigan State, Penn State. All these schools, we have friends, and maybe there's a friendly wager going on. Plus, fall in the Midwest is fantastic. The weather's usually great, aside from the occasional downpour last year. And Brian here is the only human being who wears his hat outside of his poncho hood. But it's a culture, and it's even more of a culture than the NFL. I think there's a lot more excitement in teams' offenses and strategy, and crazier things happen in college football than they do in the NFL. Now, that's why I like the bowl system too. You have something to play for outside of these top teams, and I like the bowl system. And it's the everything but the game on the field makes college football better than the NFL.
Well said, Sammy. And it's make a day of it. Go to your local school, make a day of it, plan a good tailgate, get some food, some cold beverages, walk around campus, go to a restaurant in town, cheer on your team, and make it a whole complete day this fall. You have 3 months to do it. If you're down in Bloomington, where I always reside on those afternoons, let me know, and I'll tweet you a map of where we generally set up. You can find Sammy's work at HoosierHuddle.com. Follow him on Twitter at Hoosier_Huddle. And he does good work covering Indiana football. I'm sure if you're locally here, there's some really good coverage of the Purdue football, but the state of Indiana, even up north at Notre Dame, we have some good football on Saturday afternoons. Enjoy the college game. It is one of the best things to do on Saturday. So that'll do it for this NCAA conversation on Sports Talk with Tonsoni. I'm your host, Brian Tonsoni. Please follow us at Sports Tons for this podcast. Follow me at Sony42 on Twitter. Looking forward to, once school starts in a week or so, to have some content on a webpage, sportstalkwithtonsoni.com. We're going to invite some students to write about all sports, NCAA, NFL, Major League Baseball, and so forth. So if you want some non-professional takes on sports, bookmark that. It'll be coming up, but we really enjoy sharing some conversations. Let us know what you think about the show and any content, and we will see you soon. Thanks. Enjoy your evening.